The unexpected war it started with a warning. A small science outpost on the moon HFY sent out a distress call. The signal was short, broken, full of panic. Only one sentence was clear. They're testing something. It's not just a weapon. It's fear. Then silence. The Galactic Council didn't react fast. They thought it was a technical error, or maybe another pirate attack. But Commander Jaxon Reid, one of Earth's top soldiers, didn't wait. He had seen too many errors turn into body piles, so he suited up and flew straight into danger. HFY was empty when he arrived. No people, no sounds, only long shadows and broken metal. The outpost looked burned from the inside. Screens still flickered, blood on the floor, but no bodies. Then he found it, a small black canister, cracked open. Strange gas still hissed out. His helmet scanner beeped. Unknown chemical detected. Neural agent causes fear-based hallucinations. Fear gas. Jaxon narrowed his eyes. Who would make something like this? The answer came before he asked. Again. A transmission flashed on the screen. A symbol appeared. 3 red eyes over a black sun. It was the Drexil Syndicate, a secret alien cult that believed fear was the only true power in the galaxy. They didn't conquer planets with weapons. They used fear to break people first, then walked in and took control. Now, they had a gas that could create fear in anyone but. 2 days later, Galactic Research Station 11. The Council gathered to study the gas. They invited scientists, generals, and one human soldier. Jaxon. I want to test it, he said, calmly. The room went quiet. A tall, thin alien scientist stepped forward, shocked. It's extremely dangerous. Most species faint within seconds, some scream until they pass out. Jaxon shrugged. I'm not most species. Inside the sealed test chamber, the gas hissed out slowly. Bright green. Thick. Alive, almost. Everyone watched from behind the glass. Jaxon stood still. He didn't wear a mask. The gas reached his face. He inhaled. Seconds passed. Nothing. Then more seconds. Still nothing. And then, he smiled. Smells like burnt jelly beans. The room was dead silent. One Drexil agent watching secretly on the council screen whispered, Impossible. Jaxon turned toward the glass, voice calm. Tell your gas to try harder. Word spread fast. Human inhaled fear gas and laughed. Human brain too wild for fear toxins. Drexil weapon failed. Across the galaxy, fear turned into confusion, and confusion turned into hope. Because if the gas didn't work on one species, maybe it could be stopped. But the Drexil didn't like failure, so they declared war. The first attack came at Outpost 73, a peaceful science station. Gas bombs dropped from above. Most species panicked, screamed, ran, cried, but not the humans. They held the line. They helped others breathe. They didn't run. Jaxon led the counterattack. We don't fear fear, he said over the comms. We eat it for breakfast. He and his squad stormed through Drexil bunkers, gas thick in the air, but the humans weren't scared. They moved like shadows, while the Drexil screamed, confused. How can they fight when drowning in fear? The answer was simple. Humans lived with fear every day. They learned to carry it, not obey it. Back at Galactic Council HQ, one alien leader asked another, Is it true what they say? What? That humans aren't immune to fear, they just walk through it anyway. The elder alien nodded slowly. Yes, and that's what makes them so dangerous. The weapon that failed, the Drexil were furious. Their most secret weapon, fear. Gas 09 had worked on every species they tested. It made Bracon warriors cry. It made Voltar champions run. It even made psychic species lose their minds. But not humans. Not Commander Jaxon Reid. He breathed it in and smiled. Now, the Drexil wanted answers. In a dark war chamber deep in space, Drexil High Priest Zaltun slammed his clawed fist against the table. Humans are the weakness in our perfect plan. If we can't make them fear, we must erase them. Around him, Drexil commanders hissed and whispered. They are few, one said, but they spread courage. Another said, their bravery is contagious. Other species follow them. A third voice added, they make fear look small. Zaltun growled. Then we must break their leader, break the one who inhaled our gift and laughed. Back on Outpost 73, Commander Jaxon Reid was reviewing maps with a human scout team. Alien officers stood nearby, nervous and still unsure how to treat him. Alira, a young Zareth medical officer, watched him carefully. Why doesn't it work on you? She finally asked. The gas, she added. It terrifies everyone. But you walked through it like it was fog. Jaxon didn't look up. It did work. She blinked. But you weren't afraid. I was, he said. I just didn't let it stop me. She tilted her head. So, you felt fear, but you kept moving? He nodded. That's what humans do. Later that night, a small Drexil ship crashed near the base. Jaxon was the first to reach it. Inside, they found one survivor, a young alien boy coughing, weak, and wrapped in gas. Everyone backed away. Only Jaxon stepped in. He carried the child out. Through the green cloud, his face calm, the alien medics stared in disbelief. Your heart rate didn't change, one said, scanning him. You didn't even blink. I blinked, Jaxon said. He handed the boy to Alira and walked away. Across the galaxy, more species were beginning to question the Drexil's power. Whispers turned into talks. Talks turned into alliances, and at the center of it all, Earth. The Yao. Drexil, desperate to fix their image, launched a bold plan. Kidnap the human, break him publicly, broadcast his fear. It was a trap, but the humans were already 3 steps ahead. On the planet Kelveris II, the Drexil set the bait, an abandoned colony sending false distress signals. Jaxon knew it was a setup, and he still went in. Alone. Inside the dark colony, fear gas filled the air. Traps were everywhere. Drexil priests watched through hidden cameras, ready to record his breakdown. Jaxon walked slowly, carefully. He inhaled deep. The gas cloud surrounded him. His vision shimmered. He saw shadows, monsters, nightmares, things from his childhood, from war, from death. His breathing slowed. The Drexil watching him leaned closer to their screens. Now he will fall. But instead, he sat down, right in the middle of the gas, and laughed. This again, he said. You're going to have to try harder. Then he pulled a small device from his belt, a pulse beacon. He slammed it to the ground. From above, 3 human dropships crashed through the clouds. The entire Drexil operation was burned to the ground in minutes. Later, the video leaked. Not the one the Drexil planned. The real one. The one where Jaxon sat in the middle of his own fears and smiled like it was a warm day on Earth. The galaxy watched in shock. One alien commentator said, "We thought the humans were immune to fear. But it's worse, they feel it. And walk through it like it's nothing." The Drexil plan had failed, not once, twice. Their own weapon had become their shame. And humanity had become a symbol, not of strength, but of endurance. The one they couldn't break. The Drexil Syndicate was humiliated. 2 failed missions. 2 public defeats. The fear gas had become a joke across the galaxy, and the joke had a name. Commander. Jaxon Reid posters of him appeared in underground resistance zones. Alien children imitated him in training games. And worst of all for the Drexil, species once loyal to them were turning away. Fear was no longer enough. Hope had a face now, and it was human. High Priest Zaltun smashed his war staff against the floor of the Drexil command hall. He is not a god. He is just a man with a beating heart. An advisor whispered, "But that heart doesn't break." The silence in the room was heavy. Zaltun's voice turned cold. Then we break it from the inside. Far from the rage of the Drexil, Commander Jaxon stood at the edge of a quiet base on Station Arc 9, watching stars flicker. Elira approached. She had seen him save lives. She had seen him breathe gas that made others go mad. But now, he looked tired. "You okay?" she asked gently. Jaxon didn't look at her. "I'm fine." But his voice said otherwise. "You've become a symbol," she said. "The galaxy believes in you." "I didn't ask for that," he said. "I know, but they need it." Suddenly, an alert blared. A message appeared on every screen across the base. "We have your sister, Commander Reid." The Drexil had found her. Jaxon's blood froze. He hadn't spoken to her in years, not since Earth's borders closed during the first wave of war. But she was family. She was innocent. And now, she was bait. A video played next. His sister, in a glass cell surrounded by fear gas, gasping, panicking, barely conscious. Then the Drexil voice, "Come alone, human, or she dies in terror." The council voted against a rescue. "It's too dangerous. It's clearly a trap," but Jaxon didn't care. He looked Elira in the eye. "I'm going." Elira grabbed his arm. "You'll be killed." "Maybe," he said. "But I'm not afraid of death." Her voice cracked. "Then, what do you fear?" He paused, looked down, then said quietly, "Losing someone, because I did nothing." He entered the Drexil prison station alone, unarmed, gas already leaking into the halls. He breathed it. He shook. He saw things, terrible memories, false visions, screams inside his mind. But he kept walking. He pushed through it like walking into a storm. Finally, he reached the main chamber. Zaltoon stood there tall and armored with a long hooked staff. Beside him, the glass cage, his sister inside, terrified, suffocating. "Why don't you fall?" the Drexil priest demanded. "Why don't you beg?" Jaxon stepped closer. "Because fear isn't power. Fear is a test, and I pass every time." Zaltoon roared and released a double dose of fear gas into the chamber. The lights flickered, the walls bent and twisted. Jaxon dropped to one knee. He saw monsters. He saw blood. He saw the death of everyone he cared about. He was shaking. He remembered something simple, his sister's laugh, her smile when they were kids, a day when they had nothing, but still smiled. He gritted his teeth and stood up. He slammed his fist against the cage control panel. The gas shut off. The door opened. He caught his sister in his arms as she collapsed into him. Then he turned to face the Drexil, eyes burning. "You don't understand humans. We're not fearless. We're just not yours to control." Then Elira's team, who had disobeyed orders, stormed the station. They took down the guards, burned the labs, and pulled the siblings to safety. Back at the base, Jaxon's sister rested in recovery. Elira stood beside him again. "You said you were afraid of losing someone," she whispered. He nodded. "You didn't." The galaxy watched the footage, and for the third time, the Drexil's fear failed. The galaxy no longer feared the dark, because one human taught them how to stand in it. The collapse of fear. The Drexil Syndicate was no longer feared. Not like before. 3 defeats, 3 failures, and all because of one human, Commander Jaxon Reid. He didn't fight with loud words. He didn't brag. He simply walked into fear, and didn't fall. Across the galaxy, the effects were spreading like wildfire. Voltar warriors began training with human units. Zareth officers removed fear protocols from their security systems. Even the Bracon giants, once proud and emotionless, held joint drills with human teams. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy was uniting. And the Drexil? They were unraveling. Inside their high command temple, the priests argued, "The fear gas doesn't work. Plan something else. Our believers are leaving us." But High Priest Zaltoon stood silent. His eyes burned with one word in his mind: human. He had watched Jaxon walk through his strongest gas. He had seen him rescue his sister without breaking. And now, he was planning the final strike. Meanwhile, on Station Arc 9, Jaxon stood beside Elira on the observation deck. Stars blinked quietly. Fleets moved in peace, but Jackson's face was hard. Elira knew that look. "You feel something," she said. He nodded. "They're not done." "How do you know?" Jackson's eyes never left the stars. "Because fear never gives up. It waits, and then it strikes harder than before." He was right. 2 days later, a signal reached the United Council. It came from a core world, a peaceful planet called Theros, home to over 2 billion citizens. It was under Drexil attack, but not with weapons, not with soldiers, with fear. Entire cities were covered in mist. The fear gas was now airborne, spread through satellites and drones. People weren't running. They were paralyzed. Families locked inside homes, afraid to open the door. Leaders frozen in silence. Ships unable to launch. The galaxy begged for help, but no fleet would enter. Only one voice answered, Commander Jaxon Reid. When Jaxon arrived on Theros, he wore no armor, no gas mask, only a small capsule with a symbol on his chest. The crest of united courage. He walked into the mist alone. At first, nothing. Then came the hallucinations. He saw shadows, fire, screaming. He heard voices from his past, commanders, lost in battle, friends who died on old missions, even his own voice whispering, "You can't win this time." He staggered, his legs felt heavy, his eyes watered, but he kept walking. From a tall tower in Theros' main city, thousands watched. Alien citizens, children, soldiers, all staring at the screen, watching him walk. One child whispered, "He's afraid." Another replied, "But he's still walking." And then, something incredible happened. Jaxon reached the broadcast hub in the center of the city. He hooked in a data core and sent out a live message to the entire planet. "My name is Commander Jaxon Reid. I'm human, and yes, I'm afraid. But I walk anyway. You don't have to be fearless, you just have to take one step." The message repeated. All across Theros, the people heard it, and something strange began to happen. Doors opened. Children stepped out first, then parents, then whole neighborhoods. They were shaking, crying, but walking. In an hour, the gas had no more power, not because it was gone, but because people no longer believed in it. The Drexil satellites were destroyed by a follow-up strike team, but the real victory had already happened. Fear had collapsed, and Jaxon had done it, without firing a shot. Back on Station Arc 9, a council session was held. Jaxon didn't speak. He didn't need to. A Bracon general stood and said, "We trained for strength, but we were weak. The humans showed us how to be strong." A Xerex pilot added, "Not by avoiding fear, but by walking with it." And Elira stood last. Fear used to rule this galaxy, but not anymore. Now, courage leads. And courage has a name. She turned toward Jaxon. Human. When the fearless rise, the galaxy had changed. The Drexil, once the dark shadows behind every war, were no longer feared, not because they disappeared, but because people stopped running. All across space, citizens from 100 worlds began standing up. Alien races who once trembled at the thought of Drexil gas now walked boldly into the open, and at the center of this change was one human name, Jaxon. Reid. Jaxon didn't ask for attention. He didn't give long speeches, but everywhere he went, others followed. His courage had lit a spark, and now that spark had become a fire. On the planet Brelka, a hidden Drexil lab was discovered. It was the last known factory where they were still making fear gas. Jaxon was chosen to lead the mission, but this time he wasn't going in alone. A strike force of mixed species warriors volunteered to join him. Bracon shield bearers, Xerex aerial scouts, Xerath engineers, and young human cadets trained under Jaxon himself. They called themselves the Fearless Division. The plan was simple: infiltrate the lab, destroy the gas, end the Drexil's last weapon forever. Before launch, Jaxon stood before the team. He looked across the rows of alien and human faces, all watching him, all waiting for orders. But Jaxon didn't give a speech. He just said, We don't fight because we're not afraid. We fight because fear isn't the end. It's just the beginning. The room stood silent for a second. Then they raised their weapons as one. The Fearless Division landed on Brelka in the dead of night. Drexil drones flew overhead. The air was thick with gas, but the soldiers moved forward, gas masks on. Heart steady, and in the middle of it all, Jaxon, without a mask. They stormed the facility. Drexil guards panicked. They sprayed the gas in every direction, but it didn't stop anyone. A young Zareth officer shouted, "It's not working on me. I'm scared, but I'm still here." Another Brakan roared, "Let them see what happens when fear fails." Jaxon fought through the main hallway. Blasters, smoke, screams. He kicked down a sealed lab door and came face to face with High Priest Zaltun. The Drexil leader wore a long black cloak. Tubes of gas hissed around him. His voice was cold. "You cannot stop fear. It is eternal." Jaxon stepped forward. "Then why are you the one hiding behind walls?" Zaltun raised a hand. The gas around him thickened, purple and burning. Jaxon winced. His heart raced. His vision blurred. He saw death, saw failure, saw himself falling, but he kept walking. "Your gas shows lies," he said through clenched teeth. "But I've seen worse. I've lived through worse, and I'm still standing." Zaltun screamed and charged. They fought, blade against fist, fear against will. Jaxon was wounded but didn't fall. He knocked the priest back into a tank of his own gas. With one punch, he shattered it. The gas swallowed the Drexil leader, completely. And when it cleared, Zaltun was gone. Outside, the Fearless Division had already finished their mission. The facility exploded behind them. The last Fear Lab was ash. When they returned, the galaxy celebrated. Not with parades or fireworks, but with something stronger. Unity. The Fearless Division became a symbol, not just of bravery, but of choice. The choice to walk when your legs shake. The choice to speak when your voice trembles. The choice to rise when fear tells you to sit. Jaxon sat alone after the ceremony. Elira joined him quietly. "You did it," she said. "We did it," he corrected. She looked at the stars. "Do you think fear will ever return?" He nodded. "Yes. Always." "Then what do we do when it does?" He smiled. "We rise again." The human who changed the galaxy, Jaxon Reid, never asked to be remembered. He didn't care about medals. He didn't care about titles. He only cared about one thing: making sure others didn't have to live in fear. But the galaxy remembered him anyway. Stories spread, across planets, through space stations, even to deep space miners and forgotten colonies. He walked through fear gas without blinking. He fought the Drexil with nothing but courage. He showed us how to rise. And for the first time in Galactic history, children from every species studied Earth's courage, not Earth's weapons, not Earth's armies, just the simple, powerful truth. Fear is real, but it does not win. At the new Galactic Unity Academy, a monument stood in the center of the main hall. It wasn't a statue of Jaxon holding a weapon. It was a statue of him standing calmly, surrounded by swirling smoke, his eyes locked forward. Below, one line was written in every known language. He walked into fear so others could walk out of it. Elira now served as an ambassador, representing hundreds of species working with humans, building a united defense system. But no matter how far she traveled, she never forgot. And every year she returned to Station Arc 9 to see Jaxon. He never left. He still trained cadets, still walked the halls like a ghost, quiet, steady, always watching. On her latest visit, she found him sitting near the academy gardens, watching new students laugh. "Do you ever think about leaving?" she asked. "Sometimes," he said. But I remember where we started," he said, "and I want to make sure we never go back." Later that night, the council met again. A vote was held. One question: Should Earth take command of the United Galaxy Defense Fleet? Not because of strength, not because of ships, but because of trust. The vote was nearly unanimous. Jaxon stood before the largest assembly ever seen, millions watching across the galaxy. He didn't wear armor. He wore the same uniform he always did, simple, clean, and honest. He spoke softly. "I'm not here to rule. I'm not here to lead forever. I'm just here to remind you that fear doesn't care where you're from, but neither does courage." And with that, the galaxy moved forward. Together. For the Drexil, only ruins remained. A few scattered survivors hid in shadows, whispering Jaxon's name like it was a curse. Their age of fear was over. No one listened to them anymore. One day, while walking with new recruits, Jaxon was asked, "Sir, how did you stay strong through all that fear?" He paused, looked at the stars, and answered with a smile, "I didn't. I was scared every step. But I knew someone had to go first." And that became his legacy. He wasn't the bravest. He wasn't the smartest. But he went first, and because he did, the rest of the galaxy followed. In homes, bunkers, and classrooms, his name was spoken with respect, not as a hero, but as a reminder that humans, flawed, stubborn, emotional, had something powerful inside them, the will to rise again. The legacy of the fearless years passed, wars ended, alliances formed, and the galaxy changed forever. But one thing remained the same: the story of the human who walked into fear and didn't fall. New generations of cadets arrived at the Galactic Unity Academy every cycle. Some came from powerful empires, others from distant colonies, but all of them heard one name during their first week: Commander Jaxon Reid. His story was part of the first lesson. He didn't destroy fear. He showed us we didn't have to obey it. A young Bracon cadet once asked in class, "Was he really not afraid?" The instructor smiled and said, "No, he was afraid." Then how did he do it? The answer was simple. He kept walking. On Station Arc 9, Jaxon walked slower now. His hair had grayed, his eyes were softer, but his presence still powerful. Every day, cadets and visitors would pass him in the halls. Some asked for advice. Some asked for stories, but most just wanted to walk beside him, even for a moment. Elira, now a high-ranking ambassador and peacekeeper, visited often. They would sit under the stars together, just like old times. One night she asked, "Do you think they'll forget?" Jaxon looked up at the sky. "No," he said, "because fear will return one day. It always does. And when it does, they'll remember what to do." He reached into his coat and handed her a small chip. "What's this?" she asked. "My final message," he said. "Play it when the time is right." That time came sooner than anyone expected. A new threat rose, not a war, not a weapon, but a great galactic storm that tore through communications and isolated worlds. Panic spread fast. The younger generation, born in peace, felt fear creeping back in. They needed guidance, but by then, Jaxon Reid had passed, peacefully, silently, the same way he lived. At his memorial, Elira stood before the galaxy once more and pressed the chip into the console. Jaxon's voice filled the air. "If you're hearing this, fear has come again, and you're wondering what to do. Here's my answer. Look around. You are not alone. Fear wants you to freeze, but you don't have to. You can take one step, and then another. And when others see you rise, they will too. That's how we win. Not by being fearless, but by being willing to be first." The message spread across the galaxy. Billions listened, and they stood, not just for Jaxon, not for Earth, but for each other. Years later, statues of Jaxon Reid stood not just on one world, but on many. But his true legacy wasn't made of stone. It was in every soldier who stepped forward when afraid, every leader who acted with courage, every child who whispered, "I'm scared, but I'll try." At the academy, a new phrase was written above the main gate. "Fear is not the end, it's the test. Rise anyway." And when someone asked, "Who started all this?" the answer was always the same: a human who walked into fear and didn't stop.